Our first speaker and the leader of this community is Miguel Martin. So Miguel, the floor is yours. You can just present yourself and speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Katarina. So, yeah, I'm Miguel Martin. I'm the lead of this DevOps community for Spain. And today is going to be your second talk after the first one that we did in July. Okay, it's going to be part of a series that we are going to do every month. So if you enjoy these sessions, actually, I encourage you to actually come back to us for the next meetings that we are going to do in October, November, December, etc. The idea is to actually have one meeting per month in which we will consolidate all the talks that the engineers want to do for that specific month. So in this month, we are going to have two talks. The first one is going to be done by me. It's related to terraform and infracost. Infracost is a tool to actually being able to control the cost of your cloud infrastructure. Okay. The second talk, it's going to be done by our engineer. So sorry.
Yeah, so the second talk will be provided by me. My name is Alexander Vanurikhin. I'm security engineer, and the talk will be about Azure AD Conditional Access, which basically can prevent users from doing crazy stuff.
Yeah. And well, basically, we expect this to be around 15 minutes for my talk. That is going to be a small one with a short demo at the end. And it's going to be around half an hour for the conditional access talk. And in the end, we are going to have some time for actually any question that you could have, but also after each of the talks, we also have some minutes, depending on how we divert from the planet time. We will have also some time to actually ask some questions related to that specific topic. So yeah, last of things. So thank you for actually joining us today, and I hope you enjoy our talks that took us a lot of time to prepare. So without much delay, let's go to the topics. So I actually share my screen. That's why I don't like this one, because it's slow. All right, I think all of you are watching already the presentation. Yeah, this is going to be our monthly meetup for the September month. We already presented ourselves. I will be talking about proactive cloud cost control with terraform and infracost. My colleague Alexander is going to talk about Azure Conditional Access. And my presentation, this is me sometimes. I'm a professional IT engineer with more than 20 years of experience. Currently, I'm a senior DevOps engineer here at EPAM. I'm the lead of the Malaga Azure unit, and I also the community head of Spain Cloud and DevOps. That is this community that you have joined today. And here are some places where you can actually contact me if you have some questions about this presentation or anything about the community or anything that you want to ask after this meetup. You can contact me directly. Feel free to do it. All right. Okay, let's move on. First thing, what is this infracost all about? Okay, and it's about this. So I think that all of you, when you begin to work with cloud, it is something that is full of promises, but actually the first thing that actually hit you, the first reality that hits you about cloud is super expensive. Supposedly it should cost you less than what you are spending in on-premise, but the reality is that it's complicated to actually manage this cost, tracking that cost, and over all things, keeping that cost under control. Okay. For all of us that has been working with infrastructure as code for quite some time, actually the de facto standard is Terraform. Most of you actually know it already. If you are in this talk, it's because you actually know what we are talking about. Terraform is a tool that actually allow us to is cloud agnostic tool. So it allows us to actually deploy things to multiple providers or multiple cloud vendors, or even to your on-premise infrastructure with the same language for everything. So yeah, as I was saying, sorry, it is the de facto standard for deploying infrastructure. Depending on the cloud, there are still other things that are used, like for example in Azure, there are still a lot of ARN templates around. But most of the colleagues that I have talked about this topic are actually migrating to Terraform or would like to actually migrate to Terraform because it's not always possible. Infracost. Infracost is a tool that is actually designed. It's a small tool, so it's not pretty complex or pretty big, but it's a tool that is actually designed to give you information about the changes that you are going to do in your Terraform code, and it's going to give you information about those how much those changes are going to cost you. Okay, basically it works in two modes. You can execute it analyzing what it is in your code and how much it costs, all right? And the other way it works is in showing you the difference between what you have previously and what is going to change, okay, in your current execution of the Terraform plan. Okay, it is based on Terraform. Okay, what are the characteristics of infracost, right? First thing is proactive cost evaluation. It will allow you to anticipate to any change in cost in your infrastructure, all right? It will show you information and then you decide what to do with that. Second one, it's simple to calculate cost with infracost than actually using depending on how complex is your infrastructure, but it's easier to use than actually the online calculators for cloud costs that, for example, AWS or Azure actually have. If anyone is able to use the AWS calculator to actually exactly give the cost of anything, yeah, my kudos to you because you are super good. Also, and this is one of the important things, if it outputs that information also in JSON format, so it allows us to actually do to manipulate in an easy way, not just parsing text. Nobody likes to parse text when we do automation. So JSON allows us to do things in a more easy way. It also in their webpage, it has ready to use scripts that you can use for actually creating your CI pipelines in the major CI providers with GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps pipelines, Jenkins, etc., etc. So it has integration with lots of CI providers. And also there are a couple of interesting characteristics that are paid characteristics. So it has some kind of using infracost is free, but they have a couple of these characteristics that actually they have an online dashboard in which they will represent the changes in costs all mapped with the changes that you do in code. So actually it's really easy to track. It's really easy to track who did what and where and actually who did the big change that actually begin to cripple your budget. And as I said here also, it has historical information, so you can, that mapping between changes and cost are kept in the InfraCost cloud for referring to it in the future. Infracost use cases. The most common one is to integrate infracost in your CI pipeline, in which when you, the most typical one is when someone actually creates a pull request to Terraform code, it will add a comment in your CI pipeline with the expected change in cost. All right, that's mostly for what this tool is designed, right? Another thing that is interesting is for architects or project managers or DMs to check every month the changes that were done in the previous month to see if they are deviating too much of what is should done. And in case that they see something that they don't like it, they can refer directly to the specific changes and actually who did them to ask questions or do any corrective measures that they want to do. Another two interesting things. We are going to have a small demo today about conditional CI approval. This is basically use the output of the tool to integrate in our CI pipeline some conditional approval. So if anything is above a certain limit, so if we are going to increase the cost above a certain limit, the approval of a project manager or an architect is needed for actually the pipeline to be executed. Another interesting thing that we can do with this tool, and it's something that probably I will explore in the future with another talk or an article in the community, is about prototyping evaluation. Okay, what means prototyping evaluation? There are some tools out there that allows you to based in some visual representation of your infrastructure to convert that visual representation into Terraform code, which means that after that, you can pass that Terraform code through infracost and actually gives you what your new infrastructure is going to cost you in an easy to manage way, okay? And when I talk about this, I'm thinking in a tool that is called, what's the name? Brainboard. I don't know if you know it. It's brainboard.co. That is basically like Visio, all right, in which you paint all your infrastructure, and then when you finish and configure it in a graphical way, and when you finish, it will generate that Terraform code for you. And as I said, after you have that Terraform code, you can pass it through infracost, and you will get how much that infrastructure is going to cost you. So it allows you for immediate cost calculation. So it's pretty easy to actually automate it in a way that you get immediate cost calculation based in changes that you do to your Terraform infrastructure in a graphical view, okay? That is a really interesting topic for the future. Okay. Infracost installation. We are not going to focus too much in this today, okay, because I already took like 5 minutes. But basically it's composed on 3 stages. First, you do the binary installation, either for Linux or Windows, wherever you are using, or for Mac. Then you need to register in their website to get an API code, because basically this tool, what it does is to, once that it analyzes the Terraform plant, it will go to the internet to check what is the cost of all the services that you are actually using, and that cost is updated automatically in their website based in the cost that AWS provide. Okay, so you need the API code for that. And the last step is, once that you have it working with your API code, just configure it for use in with the CI tool that you use more often. Okay, any pipeline, either Jenkins or Azure DevOps or whatever. We are going to use today Azure DevOps in the demo, but there are pipelines you can use it everywhere. Actually. All right. Yeah, let's begin with the demo, right? I have lost my mouse. So let's first. So our demo is composed in this. All right. Okay. So we have some Terraform code. All right. It is basically is going to create some VNet, subnet, network interface, and something that they have here commented that is basically a Windows virtual machine. Okay. Also, we have the Azure pipeline in our repo. This pipeline, what we are going to do, and we will check later step by step, is to first do the installation of the infracost tool. Okay, as you see, super easy. Later is going to actually use the infracost API key, configure it as an environment variable. We have it here, but they should have protected it with Key Vault. And later, infracost work in two ways. Okay, it can analyze your Terraform code, and it can output the total cost of everything that you are deploying, or it can work in differential mode. So it will, you need to do a plan first, and then based in that plan output is going to actually calculate how much you are going to spend more or less from the previous deployment. Okay. In this demo, we are going to actually execute both the breakdown. In this case, I'm going to show, because we are going to execute the pipeline twice, I'm going to add this here to actually show the whole cost, because if there is no change, it will show nothing until you have this here, and also I can format it as a table. And then I'm going to do the differential. In the differential, you actually do a couple of steps. In the first one, what you are going to do is actually do a Terraform plan and export it to a JSON, all right? And then we are going to use infracost to analyze that JSON and provide us with the total cost of the changes that you are going to apply, all right? The next thing that we are going to do is use that information that we have from the from infracost, which is basically here in, I don't know if you know Azure Devops pipelines, but here we are converting that into a variable. And it will be used in the next stage of the pipeline to actually decide if the changes that we are doing are above a certain spending limit, okay, it is going to request an architect for some approval, okay? In this case, it's going to request it myself. And the pipeline itself is going to be stop waiting until that approval is given, or until the timeout actually happens. If the timeout happens, the pipeline will be canceled and nothing will be deployed, right? If the cost is is less than this limit, okay, that's simple. It's not going to actually execute this, and it will go to the next task. That what it's going to do is basically deploy the infrastructure, all right? So without further delay, let me show you our pipeline, all right? So let's first, as you saw it before in our Terraform code, we have the deployment of the server actually commented, all right? So let's just execute the pipeline. And let's wait until it finishes. We can show the output while it's running. Okay, so while it runs for the rest of the pipeline, I want to show you what is the output of the tool itself. Okay, this is the first one in which we are going to do the breakdown. The breakdown, as you remember, is the one that is going to analyze your whole infrastructure and is going to show you what it costs. No changes. It will just show you everything, right? In this case, we are going to deploy basically 3 resources that are free: network, subnet, and virtual network interface. The next thing that is going to execute actually is the infracost diff, in which the plan actually it will show that there is no changes. So actually, when it calculates, when it show you the cost, it will show you that there is no cost. Okay. So we go with the next interesting part of our pipeline is the manual validation. All right. This is the part in which it evaluates if the cost is above certain limit. In this case, the cost is 0. So it will not pass the limit of $100. So it will not request approval, and it will execute the next step automatically, which is deploy infrastructure. All right. Now let's do a small modification in our code. Let's hope that actually Marvelous Mouse allows me to actually do the modifications. So let's say this, uncomment the server, and then do right. So we are pushing our changes to the cloud. Okay. Now we execute it again, right? We didn't touch anything on the pipeline, just added some server to our terraform code. So let's see what happens. Actually, let's see it here. Let's not track the log for now. Let's just go to the pipeline output. Calculating the cost. Dun, 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 dun. Right, so it finished calculating the cost. Now is
Miguel, one question when this is running. The cost is only for the new resources or for the new ones and the existing ones?
Is only for the new resources because I'm getting the variable from the differential. So it will evaluate our current changes with the Terraform plan. It will evaluate our current changes to the previous thing. But actually, it didn't do anything because the cost is 0. So probably I just forget to do something. Yeah, probably actually.
Okay.
Give me a second, please.
Thank you, Miguel.
Oh, I didn't save the file. Okay, that's the demo effect. So, repeat this. Sorry, guys. All right. Let's rerun the pipeline again and wait for 30 seconds. Regarding your question, so if you do it in a way, actually, if you go to the infracost page, what it will show you is the most typical exercise is actually outputting the infracost differential, so the changes as a comment in your pull request. That's the most typical one. Okay, there are plenty of information on how to do it in the web page. Okay, so we see here that if we go to the end, we will see that the cost has been increased. So we see here that the amount that we are going to be charged is 152, which is higher than 100. So here our pipeline is waiting for external validation, all right? If I show you, for example, my email, if I'm able to find it. You will see this one, okay? So in Azure DevOps it will send you an email requesting for manual validation. Okay, if you click here, it will take you directly to the pipeline in Azure DevOps, which we will see, and we can review it. Also, if we see in the here in the regular output, not the logs, we will see that there is information about that 0 from 1 manual validations passed. So it is waiting for someone to actually review it. Right? So what we are going to do is actually review it. It will show us the cost that is higher than the limit that we have. And here you can write a comment like, okay, let's do it. And paste. Right. So when you click resume, it will actually continue the pipeline. So the wait for external validation has been executed now and it's green. So now it will continue with the deployment, right? If we, let's wait until it finishes. It's not going to deploy anything because I have it set it up in that way. So the execution of pipelines is faster. But I want to just execute one last time before we finished, because I want to show you what would happen if you don't approve it. Okay. While we wait till this execute, any new question so far?
Hey, Miguel, do you have a module for running or executing this math in the background?
A module when you say
a module for executing the math itself, right? So you're calculating this based on what? Where is this the source for?
Yeah, let me show you the source code.
Thank you.
Okay, so I executed again. It's asking you for review. So what is going to happen is that in this case, they say it's too much, right? And I reject it. When I reject it, what is going to happen is that does this task depend on the previous one? So it will show you that this one has failed, and this one will not be executed. As far as I remember, or failed. I don't remember. Yeah, it will be not executed. All right. And here you can come back and see what the guy that actually rejected said about it. All right, regarding your question, let me actually briefly show the code. Is here, okay? It's a type of task in Azure DevOps that is called manual validation. This is Azure DevOps pipeline, but actually you can do mostly the same in GitHub Actions or anything that you want to do. Just find these kind of external approvals to your CI pipelines, all right? And then base those external approvals, in some kind of condition. In this case, it's pretty straightforward in Azure pipelines because there is already a field about that in which you just do a comparison between two variables, right? And it's an interesting question, just because one small thing related with the output of infracost from the JSON, okay? When I extract the cost from the JSON file, from the output, from the JSON output, you need to convert it from integer to float because in bash there is no float. So you can use this pipe BC. BC is a tool that actually convert to mathematical, convert an expression to a mathematical expression. In this case, it will automatically convert this number into float because it has its 135 point something, and if you don't do this, your pipeline will fail, right? But this is because it's bash. You can use PowerShell, you can use it on Python, whatever, okay? It's just a tool, so we are developers, so we can do whatever we want with it. This is just one of the multiple ways that we can use this tool to actually control or grow cost, okay? Any other question? Actually, let me. Yeah. Any questions? Nothing more? All right. So I hope you actually enjoyed the talk. I hope also that you give a try to infracost. It's a really nice tool. Just before I finish, because I suddenly remember it to show you this, I want you to show you the dashboard, all right? We have been talking about the dashboard, and I want to show you, in this case, I'm not using pull request, but in case that you use pull request to actually show you your difference in cost, it will see here in some historical graph, but you can see my by the different repos based in my API key, as we were discussing before, you can see my history of changes, right? What commit, what is the costly change it's always calculated per month. I don't know if it can be modified. I suppose yes. And yeah, it's basically you will see here the full history of the changes in cost that you have with the tool. And also you have different integrations that you can choose with ready to use scripts to actually introduce it in your pipelines. Yeah, that's mostly all. So, and this actually finished my presentation. So if you don't have any more questions, that's all, folks. Okay, and now I'm going to actually proceed with the next talk. So let's move on. I think, give us a second because I need to actually share the screen for the people that is here in the office. So I will be showing this here. I have stopped sharing. Okay, great.
You stopped. It's already me.
Great. So
okay,
let's do this.
Cool. Great. So I guess it'll be a bit quicker.
Sorry for
not
that.
Not exactly. Okay, so I'm going to talk about like Azure AD Conditional Access is a part of Azure, meaning Azure AD. First, quick about me. So I'm security system engineer. Previously, I was working mostly with mobile device management area in Azure AD, basically just messing with user devices and the way how they're accessing services. And for past several years, I started to work on securing Azure. And just recently joined EPAM. So today I'm going to talk about what is conditional access, how to use it, what are the license requirements, because unfortunately nothing is free in this world, and we're going to go through some demo. So what is conditional access, and specifically what is conditional access policy? So conditional access policy is basically a scenario which you can create to determine how your users can access your services. To be specific, scenario is created in a way like who, meaning specific user, group of users, or it can be dynamic group in Azure AD, or it can be even Azure AD role. So how this group of people or service principals even can access applications, all cloud applications, all federated applications, or some specific applications, and what will be the conditions for them to access this application. So you can require MFA, you can require devices to be hybrid Azure AD joined, you can require compliant devices, you can enforce terms and conditional acceptance, you can transfer this session to another service which is called, so it was previously called Microsoft Cloud Application Security. Now it's called Defender for Cloud Apps, I guess. Or on some conditions, you can even block access. So to go in specifics, when we're talking about like who, as I mentioned, we're talking about specific users. So you can specify like, okay, we're going to access, to assign this policy to single users specifically picked up, or we can assign that to all users in an organization. One remark, I definitely do not advise to use all users options ever. Never use it, never. You can assign policy to specific groups. Group can be static Azure AD groups, it can be dynamic Azure AD groups. And also you can assign policy to directory roles. In my directory roles, we mean global admin, Azure AD admin, security reader, and so on. So basically all the roles you have inside Azure AD. And then you specifying like in which conditions this policy will be applied. And these conditions can be user risk. So it's basically checking the risk of the user account. Next is a sign-in risk, and they can be confusing together because what's the difference? And the difference is that user sign-in risk is checking user account itself. So like if there is any leaked credentials or any other compromisation or anything. Sign-in risk, checking exact sign-in of the user. And basically Azure AD is checking all the different things like what are the device you're using to log in? What are the location for your login? So for example, if you're logging in from Spain and in next second you have login from, I don't know, South Africa, that's a bit suspicious, so your sign-in risk will be higher. So next is device platform, and here you can just specify operating system. So it can be macOS, Windows, Android, iOS, Linux even. If you decide to have like separate policies for separate device platform, then you can specify locations, but here it's a bit confusing because in reality it does mean just the specific IP range. So if for some reason you want to create policy which will be specific for, I don't know, office location, you can do that. Or if you want to block access from specific country by IP range, you also can do that. And then you need to specify like to which applications this policy will be applied. So meaning will it be native application, mobile application, web browser, so on. And in some cases, you can even specify protocols which will be used. And last is a new addition is basically you can create a filter for devices. So you will be able to write a query which will be specifying like things like who is the owner of this device, what are the device manufacturer, and so on. But one thing is, for that to actually work, your Azure AD needs to be aware about this device. So device obviously needs to be at least Azure AD registered. At best, it should be managed by Intune or any other integrated MDM system. So when we decided who is applicable for this assignment, we can then assign that to specific application. And as I mentioned, we can assign that to all cloud applications. And by cloud applications, we mean everything which is registered with Azure AD. You can specify specific applications. You can also do things like assign to all applications but exclude some if you want. And also in application section, we all have this user action thing, which is basically what exactly user is doing. So here we have things like register security information and register join device. So if user, for example, will try to reset his password or change MFA setting, you might require some additional things to happen, or you can even block that on some certain condition. And the same with register or join devices. So basically, if user want to register a new device in Azure AD or join this device to Azure AD, you can also specify some additional checks. And conditions, finally, is, as I mentioned, easiest one, we can just block it altogether. So just, I don't want these users to access these applications at all. That's the easiest conditional access policy. Or if you want to grant this access, you can specify on which exact condition you want to grant it. So for example, you can require additional MFA identification, and in this case, it will trigger Azure MFA additional claim. You can require device be marked as compliant. And basically for that, Azure AD will need to have information about device compliance state, which is coming from Intune or any other integrated MDM system. You can require hybrid Azure AD join device, so that's applicable only for Windows devices, so meaning that device need to be joined on-premises Azure AD, on-premises Active Directory, and Azure AD as well. Next two things is applicable for mobile devices only, is require approved client app and require application protection policy, and they are almost about the same. So Microsoft has a concept of application protection policy. So that's a concept of basically, let's say, sandboxing corporate applications in a corporate bubble. And what it actually do is that corporate information will reside inside this bubble. So first setting, which is a required approved client app, will force user to have application which is supporting this corporate bubble. And next one will force first to apply this application protection policy, and after that only get access to your service. So it's just a little bit more restrictive. And the last one is require password change. So that can be used in a combination with previous things in a way like if user sign-in risk is high, or user risk is high, I just want this user to change his password immediately. So you can do that. And then, as I mentioned, you can forward the session itself to other tools. In this case, you can use some things like use application force restrictions, and that's applicable for Exchange Online and SharePoint Online. So basically, that will trigger built-in functions in Exchange Online and SharePoint Online, and will help you to use things like don't allow non-managed devices to download something, or don't allow access to unmanaged devices at all. Also, you can forward this session to Microsoft Cloud Application Security or Defender for Cloud. And in these cases, then in this Gatsby solution, you can basically create a policy what exactly user will be able to do inside this session, but it's a completely separate tool. Then sign-in frequency, you can specify like how frequently user will have to re-sign in. Basically, it's not the same as token duration, but basically do almost the same thing. Then you can allow or disallow persistent browser session. Next thing is actually something new. So it's continuous access evaluation. So continuous access evaluation is basically allowing you to customize how exactly access will be evaluated from user. So idea is that before this setting, conditional access policy would be working only during sign-in phase. And if user has valid token, this token itself will have some data about like device, location, and so on. And Azure AD will use that. But what Microsoft realized is that there is a gap between the refreshing token and actual change of information. So we might have a situation where, for example, user here had his account locked. He still has active token, and while his account is locked, he will be able to sign in. So continuous access evaluation settings will help you to work on this. And disable resilience defaults, that's also something new, and that's basically like if there is a problems with Azure AD sign-in services overall, what and how you want Azure AD to behave. So, for example, basic idea is that if Azure AD primary sign-in service is down, it will continue to carry on and extend tokens. If you want to do that, you can just don't touch it, or you can just disable the resilience default. And in this case, even if primary authentication service in Azure AD is down, it will just don't allow other people to go in because conditional access service is not available. Also, in Azure AD conditional access, there is built-in what if tool, which basically allow you to play a game to understand in which case specific user might have or doesn't have access to tool. I personally don't see big value. I don't see the big value in this tool because of the next thing. So now we have report-only mode for these policies. So basically, you can create policy in a way you want. So you designed the whole scenario. Before that, you could only assign that in enable, and it will have immediate impact on users. And it might be a bit noisy if users get, I don't know, locked out or they can't access their services. But now you can create a scenario, meaning policy, enable that in report-only mode, and that will add additional information in Azure AD sign-in logs. So basically, you'll be able, in the background, analyze, okay, what will be impact of for my users if I enable this policy. So that's way more representative when signing to a what if tool. So let's go to quick summary. So, demo. So basically, creation of policy is easy. So in Azure, we do have specific section, which is Azure AD, or you can use Entra portal, or you can use like Azure AD portal. It doesn't matter. At the end, you will get here. So creation policy, as I mentioned, like we can specify users here, assign it to someone or everyone. We can also specify who to exclude. So for example, we can assign, I don't know, to all users and exclude, for example, I don't know, global admins, which probably a good thing. Then we can specify cloud applications, all selected applications, and in the list of selected applications, basically you will see like everything which is registered with Azure AD. So you can specify Yammer separately, like forms and so on. The only thing you need to consider here is that in Microsoft services, everything is interconnected. So if you specify, for example, SharePoint separately, that will affect Teams, that will affect OneDrive, because under the hood, they all use SharePoint. So if you're using that for Microsoft services, always think about, okay, how these services can be connected. Or the best choice probably will be enable that to the whole Office 365 suite as a bulk, because by using that, you'll have a persistent user experience everywhere. Okay, so let's say specify all cloud applications. So then we need to specify condition, risk level, high, medium, low, sign-in risk, the same. Device platform, as I mentioned, like we can specify exact device platform here, meaning operating system. Locations, with locations, so as you can see, like I don't have here trusted locations or any locations, because separately you need to basically create location using a p range, which is I don't know, I don't see big value in that. And then client applications. So as I mentioned, you can specify like browser, mobile application, Exchange, XFCing, other client, and so on. So it's up to you what to use. The only thing here which is important is that conditional access is based on modern authentication, meaning that if you still have some services which is using legacy authentication for some reasons, I don't know why, but still conditional access won't be working with that because it's working actually after authentication. And then last but not the least is filter for devices. And as I mentioned, if you want to configure that here, basically you can specify the security, like, I don't know, manufacturer, for example, you can specify, I don't know, HP, and we just create policy for HP devices only. Might be handy as well. For access, for grant, as I mentioned, you can block access, grant access. You can select specific setting here, or you can have a combination. So, for example, I want device to be either compliant or hybrid Azure AD join. And then in this setting, I'll just need to select if I want to select controls. It might be handy in situations where you understand, for example, that compliance state is not adequate, or for some reasons it's having some delays, and you still want to have give access to corporate resources from hybrid Azure AD join devices, for example. So you can create that. And then, like session control, again, you can select these settings. Some settings can be working only if you select like Office 365, Exchange, and SharePoint Online. Yeah, wait. And then at the end, you can create enable policy in these three modes. So it can be off. So basically, you can just create a scenario, but don't enable that, or you can enable policy in report only mode. Good thing actually is that before, Microsoft didn't have this, and that could create, that actually created a lot of issues. So we creating now policy which is assigned to all users, to all cloud applications, and the ground we can just create block access. So basically, we're creating policy that's blocking access for all users, for all applications in all conditions. And now, as you can see, we do have this message underneath, which is saying that you are going to lock yourself. You can exclude yourself easily. And the reason I'm mentioning is that be careful with that, because I know for a fact that Microsoft had some customers who actually lock them out completely from that. Interesting. I didn't save it, so I shouldn't be locking out myself. 1 second. Yeah, so be careful with creating additional access policies. You might block something. So how exactly that's going to work for users? So for example, here I have like test user. Sec. So I just logged out with this test user. So it's demo CA1. So if we check in policies here, so I do have this session control policy, which is assigned to demo CA1 user, and I'm using app enforced restriction. So that means that if I go to my Outlook, I should have something different. Yes, first of all, if we check here, I forgot about that. I created a policy which basically enforcing terms and conditions. So here, blue or red, it's the name of terms and condition, terms of use, sorry. And it's assigned to like all users and require user consent. So in this way, you can create like terms of use for every your services. You can ask user to extend your policy. Yes, I'm going to accept that. And only after acceptance of this policy, user will be allowed to get in. And which is actually also great feature is that here you'll be able to see the history of like who are the users who actually accepted, when they accepted that, and which file name, meaning that if you're updating versions of your terms of use, you'll see which exact version they actually accepted. And when you're refreshing these terms and conditions, you can actually force all users to accept these terms of use. So that's actually already handy. So I don't have any mails in my inbox. That's, yeah, I forgot about that. But basically, as Miguel said, it's a demo
effect.
Demo effects. Yes, I forgot to send some mails to my testing account. But basically, the policy we applied will detect that I'm using non-managed device, and it just won't allow me to download anything. So I won't be able to download any file. I won't be able to download anything. Let me check if I can do anything from SharePoint. Okay. So for SharePoint, I do have a different policy. So if I go to policies, here I have policy which is assigned to the same user, specifically for SharePoint, and I'm granting access to SharePoint only if my device is either compliant or hybrid Azure AD joined, because that's my test tenant. Obviously, my EPAM device is not managed by this test tenant. That's why basically I'm getting this message saying that, well, you cannot get here, so set up your device first. So basically it will force me to, well, it will try to force me to configure my device with Intune first and then allow me to get into. Okay, so, the most important thing I forgot. So all the information about like sign-ins, attempts, and everything is obviously going into sign-in logs. And if you want to analyze that, as I mentioned, everything is being sent into logs, and you can export Azure AD logs into Log Analytics workspace. And then in Log Analytics workspace, you can just query your sign-in logs for whatever you want. And on top of everything, because now we do have report-only policy, second. So yeah, here we have additional information about conditional access policies, and basically here's our report-only policy, and it will tell what exactly is happening. So in this case, it's not applying, but if this user will be in scope, it will be saying, okay, allow, or it will tell report only accepted or failed or anything. So basically, if you have existing users, you can create report only policy and then just create log analytics report which showing you what exactly is happening with this policy, which is quite handy. Yep. So summary, conclusion. You can and should control how exactly users is accessing your applications. Even if you used report-only mode, always perform phase deployment of these conditional access policies, because report-only might have some issues and not detect everything. So because that's actual conditional access policies affecting how users accessing services, due to that, please use phase deployment. So start from small but diverse group and then just extend deployment as always. And last is that conditional access policy cannot solve all the identity related security risk. It's not a silver bullet. So always think as a whole about conditional access policy as a part of the whole solution for security for identity. Yep. And that's it for me. So a bit partial.
Okay, everyone, I have to say sorry because we spent more time that was planned, but do we have any questions on this presentation? Anything that you want to ask? Apart from the matrix blue red pills. No? Okay, cool. So let me actually finish the gathering today. So thank you everyone for actually joining us today, for your patience to be here until the end, until 6:03. Okay, give me a moment. There is some question. Oh, actually, it's not a question, it's a thank you. All right. Yes, as I was saying, thank you for being here today. I'm not going to actually delay anything more. So if there is no more questions, I actually encourage you to come back to us on next month talks. Also, take a look from time to time on the community. We post some articles from time to time. And if you want to participate with us, either as a speaker or writing an article or actually being just a volunteer to help us with some administrative tasks, just come to me. I will give you some work to do. You will get some cool badges in as a payment, and maybe probably in the future we will have some gifts for you. So yeah, I encourage any of you to actually that want to work with us to do it, and just come to me and I will give you some tasks. Thank you again, and see you again in the next month. So bye bye.
Thanks all.
Bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you.